vacation is relaxing, but affordability would make it even better for the Indian middle class. So rising affordability of this section of tourists has driven up demand for mid-sized hotels. So much so that prices surged by 8 to 9% for affordable hotel rooms this holiday season. Is this a sign of demand finally outpacing supply? Let's check in with Hotelia Executive Chairman and MD at Kamat Hotels, Mr. Vishal Kamat. He's joining in right now. Mr. Kamat, thanks very much for taking out the time. Let's talk about what's been happening with the holiday season and whether or not you are seeing the demand outpacing supply this time around.
It's been a fairly happy new year for the industry. Diwali was a little slack, but we found a good bounce back in the new year end. A lot of people have gone to, especially in the leisure segment, we found a good movement. But even staycations, which have been picking up steadily over the last few years, this year showed excellent results. Staycation being where you stay in the city and you don't want to travel out because of maybe traffic or maybe due to constraints, family constraints or other challenges. So staycation also, we found that our business hotels doing quite well, rather exceedingly well in this thing. The key part is to give value, the right kind of blended value. I think that those who've done that have done very well in both leisure and in business hotels.
Mr. Kamat, according to a brokerage report which suggested that while the inventory room supply growth was 10.6% against the room demand growth of 10.2% from the year FY08 to FY18, that has changed considerably to now the supply growth being just 5% in the next 5 years to come versus demand growth of 10 to 12%. Is that a right statistic?
There is a large gap between the supply and demand, which comes in spurts. On a holistic nature, there's still a time for the right kind of point to touch, where again the supply would come in a large quantum because of ROI concerns, because of various other factors also. Also, the gestation period is very long in hospitality. So yes, supply could take longer to catch up with the demand, but it's not that the demand is outstripping the supply exceedingly. For that, I think a couple of years more would require, where the demand would outstrip supply to the point that it would again become very attractive for people to set up new hotels. But yes, the existing players today who are already there, those people are definitely getting benefits. We can see an improvement in mainly the occupancies across the nation. ARRs city to city, market to market, there have been improvements. So I think overall we can see a good time coming from the hospitality, which has been growing from the last 3 years. I think that growth will continue at least for the next couple of years, I think.
For yourself, Mr. Kamat, by the end of this year, what would it look like in terms of a breakup of the numbers, if you could just give us a highlight of it?
Sorry, I didn't
what do you expect to close?
I couldn't hear that.
What do you expect to close the year with? I mean, you've got quarter 3 numbers coming up, but I'm not going to focus only on quarter 3. I'm going to take stock of the entire year.
So overall the year has been very good. There has been a very good growth. In fact, the first 2 quarters which we had as a whole have done exceedingly well. There has been a good growth in the first 2 quarters, because of which the third quarter, which is more or less a little, there is a growth, but it's incremental. It's nothing extraordinary. But I think on a YTD basis, we should have a very good growth. The books, business on books for the month of Jan and Feb look exceedingly robust. And even in terms of the wedding market, we've done exceedingly well at our Fort Jadavgarh for the month of December, being the highest weddings we've ever done in a month. So definitely people are still looking at celebrating, spending. So I think the year should close quite well.
Any ballpark figure?
It's a little too early for me to say, but I think it would be reasonable for us to expect at least a 10% growth on the whole company as a whole.
All right. Okay, Mr. Kamat, going forward, how have this, in terms of supply, in terms of room additions, how has it been for you at Kamat Hotels? Have you seen significant increment in terms of new room additions coming in and new properties being built up by Kamat Hotels?
Our last focus was on entirely making the company robust and coming out from a downturn from 2014. We have managed to do that to a great extent. In fact, we are very proud of our team and the kind of challenges they faced. And touch wood, we find ourselves today in a position where we are through with most of our challenges in terms of the past burden. Now, coming towards the future opportunities, definitely, considering that we've been in the business for more than 70-80 years and we have that kind of robust experience and even bandwidth, it's now time that we look at opportunities which we are scouting, whether it is in the lease, because today acquiring an asset is still a very costly proposition, and I don't think we could look at that maybe just yet, but definitely in the lease and in the management space, definitely we are looking at certain opportunities, and once they consummate, I'll be very happy to tell Neeraj and yourself.
All right. Mr. Kamat, aside from that, how is the competitive environment in your space at this current juncture? We've been seeing a lot. Obviously, the target audience may be slightly different from the likes of an OYO Rooms, but in general, in your category, how has the competition been?
See, competition breeds quality, and I think that is something which the consumer especially more is looking at. It's a good thing that there is more competition, whether it's domestic players, international players, because it keeps you on your toes. But when it comes to alternate accommodation providers, I think that is the biggest challenge which we right now see in the press and media, where you have the likes of alternate providers who are not necessarily following what is the Indian law or even other factors in terms of consumers safety or in terms of consumer requirements. So I think that is a challenge which has the industry is finally woken up to. Today a lot of these technology is not bad, and I'm a big advocate of technology and the use of technology, but when the misuse of technology happens, I think that's something when we need to all wake up to. Today there are a lot of alternate accommodations which are not a direct threat to our industry, but what happens is it affects the destination as a whole. If today something happens today in say it's not fair to name anybody, but if suppose a transport company has an issue with its customer which is a socially not acceptable one, then it affects the city as a whole. Same way in our industry also, if an alternate accommodation is misused and something wrong happens there which is socially not acceptable, then it affects the destination as a whole. We need to make sure that we have a credible India where consumers who come from abroad or in India have a safe and fun experience, and we as organized players, as in hotel industry, we provide that. We are liable to the law and we are liable to our customers. But when you have alternate accommodations, neither are they liable and they get away with things. So I think this is one of the biggest industry fights we're having right now, of illegal listings, wrong listings. Recently FSSAI took action against certain food apps who had listed non-FSSAI hotels and restaurants and they had to withdraw it. So I think these are the kind of challenges which the industry will maturely handle and come out with a win-win with the technology partners.
Right. I assume you are indicating Airbnb, towards Airbnb, but is there a significant shift in terms of the client?
I'm indicating a lot of platforms, ma'am. It's not only fair to say one person's name or two's. It's not about one person or two people's name. I'm saying it as a general, because when one person does it, everybody's following it, then it becomes a whole. So it's not fair to say one person's name or the other person's name. As a whole, if somebody has taken up a practice, then as a whole they need to stop it. So it's not about one person or two persons or anybody in particular.
Okay, got that, Mr. Kamat. Just one last question before we wrap up this interview regarding your occupancy rates and how are they likely to shape up?
Touch wood, our occupancies have been very good for the city of Mumbai. Our hotels, both which we have in Andheri and in Ville Parla, orchids have been doing exceedingly well. On a YTD basis, we've been sitting at an 85% occupancy, which has been really something we are very grateful towards our customers, because they like the product, they keep coming back. We've been doing exceedingly well on that front, and the city also has been doing very well. A lot of good initiatives taken, a lot of pharma events, a lot of other events happening. But that's the trend, I think, across the nation. If you look at even certain other cities also, they've also been doing exceedingly well in occupancy. Recently, I must laud the Orissa government for their initiative of taking up sports in a big way, because of which the entire state of Orissa has benefited in a big way. I think every government needs to take up one key cause and identify with that cause. Odisha has realized that they need to take up sports and develop sports. So they're doing exceedingly well, and the world was there, and along with that the world experienced what is Odisha culture, Odisha food, and stayed in all these hotels. So every government, if they take up one issue, there are enough to go around, and I think as a whole, as a nation, we can afford to offer something unique. That's something I think which each government needs to support our industry. Only by doing that, we don't need any benefits and incentives. Just give us a good working environment and we will work hard.
All right, Mr. Kamat, that was lovely chatting with you. Thank you so very much for joining in. Appreciate you taking out the time this morning.
Thank you.